Okay, so this ties in really well to my next point. I agree with you. A one state solution that is based on equal rights seems to be the more viable solution. So when we're talking about one state with equal rights, I think in order for that to work, there needs to be a very solid effort on both sides to acknowledge pain and suffering that the other has felt and to take responsibility for pain and suffering that has been caused by both sides. So reconciliation, I think, is extremely important. There's plenty of examples around the world of reconciliation, including in my own country of Canada. It doesn't justify any atrocities committed in the past by whoever is doing the reconciliation, but I think it provides a platform to build from. It gives you that foundation to say, look, we've accepted. Here's the situation. We need to move forward, and this is how we do it. So, what to you? Reconciliation. What does that look like between Israelis and Palestinians? How would the two communities come together and find a way to do that?
So I talk about empathy a lot, and I think that empathy is very, very important in the reconciliation process for just individuals. But if we're going to talk about the political aspect of it, I think that there does, as you said, there needs to be a movement, because right now the PA's official position is the two-state solution. Even the joint list, Ayman Odeh, the representative of the joint list in the Knesset, the Palestinian, they're also pro two states, even though they advocate for equality within Israel. So the two-state solution needs to be, I think, just wiped off. We need to stop talking about it, because the more we talk about a two-state solution, the less time we have to talk about actual solutions. And I think that the objection that I hear a lot when we talk about living together is, number one, the observation that binational states can be violent and unstable, especially in regards to the Palestinians. And there's a lot of problems with that, and I think there's a lot of racism involved in this kind of objection, because it paints Palestinians as this monolithic group that our only life goal is to murder Israelis, right? But what it misses, and there's actually a really cool article in 2000, published in 2010 by the political scientists Andreas Wimmer, I think, and Brian Min, and they found that ethnic groups are more likely to initiate conflict with the government the more excluded from state power they are, right? And this is something that's very important to understand. There's also Limor Yehuda, which is an Israeli legal scholar, noted that there's numerous studies that find strong correlations between political exclusion and structural discrimination of ethno-national groups. So were we not Palestinians, were we not so dehumanized in the public discourse, in my opinion, it would become obvious that, we prefer not to kill or be killed, right? And this is something I think that's inherent when you talk to a lot of very ardent Zionists, is they truly believe that our only life goal is to kill Israelis. But all it takes is to compare Palestinians who enjoy Israeli citizenship and those who don't. Israel's Palestinian citizens, when they live at a much closer proximity to Israeli Jews, there's practically no terrorism from Palestinian citizens of Israel, right? And they could, if they wanted to, they could terrorize Israeli Jews far more effectively than Hamas, for example. But I think it's really about the lack of voice and the lack of representation, because when Palestinians in Gaza want to protest Israeli policies because they affect them directly, right? They have a few options but to cheer the Hamas rockets or to walk to the fence,
Yeah.
right? But by contrast, when Palestinian citizens of Israel want to protest Israeli policies, they can go and vote. So it's really, really important to make that distinction. And I think it's also this Orientalist trope that us Arabs are barbaric, we are violent, we are oppressive. And I don't know how to approach that, because I don't want to seem like I'm trying. I mean, it's important to humanize, but also it's important to realize that when you talk like this, you're fighting against this racist narrative, and you're kind of arguing for your people, and you're saying that we deserve equal rights. And to me, we're living in 2020, right? So to talk about equal rights in 2020, in my opinion, is kind of, I mean, this is the reality we live in, and this is what we're going to fight for. But it's just really sad to me, right? That I have to justify the fact that us Palestinians, we are deserving of freedom of movement in our historic homeland. We are deserving of being able to live in dignity, of being represented in government. And so, I mean, the objection falls short, and people will tell you, yeah, but we disengaged in Gaza in 2005 and this happened. It's not little. You can't take out a settlement and expect, this is it's structural systems of oppression that started not in 1948, that started with the British Mandate. We have never had the opportunity to self-determine in our own homeland. 90% of the population in the 1930s was Arab, right? Haifa, Jaffa, these were the two biggest Arab economic hubs in Palestine, and they were ethnically cleansed of their Arab populations. And now they're thriving Israeli communities. So I see a future where my generation, and if it's not my generation, it's my kids, but at least I want to set up a foundation for my kids to be able to fight for equality and fight for their rights without falling into the narrative of, oh, you don't exist, or you guys are all this and you guys are all that. We need to be bigger than that. And I think that I don't necessarily want to talk about privilege, but I haven't lost anyone in the conflict directly related to me. And this is something that's important to understand, because it's very hard to go to tell someone, for example, an Israeli or Palestinian that's lost their loved ones to terrorists or to attacks, that you need to reconcile. It's sometimes there's a very big block. But there is also hope. For example, there's the bereaved community. I think it's called the Bereaved Community Organization, where Israelis and Palestinians come together, people that have lost siblings, relatives, they come together and they talk about peace. And there's actually a podcast where there's this Palestinian that's talking about his experience joining this community. And he says, this was the first time I've ever seen an Israeli cry. I never thought in my life that this was something that I would see. And so when you humanize the other person, or the enemy in that sense, and you realize that they're human beings and that they have goals, they have aspirations, they have fears, just like you and I, it becomes much easier. Because also in the age of social media, it's very easy to type up comments and to hate. But face to face, it's very hard to hate someone, like truly hate someone without knowing them. It's for me personally, it's very hard.
I don't agree.
Right? It's hard to hate someone face to face. So and right now in Palestine, you have this policy of segregation. Israelis and Palestinians aren't interacting.
Mm-hmm.
So reconciliation for me starts with humanization, but it also starts with a movement that can sort of not exclude one side, and kind of, we need to bring people together.